welcome inside. IndyStar Preps Weekly got the name right. Gonna skip the banter, 4 times the charm. Kyle Neddenriep, Akeem Glaspie. Kyle, what game did you cover?
I covered Brownsburg and Ben Davis, and it was a statement win for Brownsburg. They really got out to a 24-0 lead, played from ahead the whole time. Ben Davis had a muff punt that they had him stop the first possession. Kind of the storyline, we talked about last week was Jaden Whitaker. How would he come out with his ankle injury? Akeem covered that game a couple weeks ago against HSE. He didn't come back in the game, and they were kind of leading up to the game. Knew he was going to play. Knew that. Didn't know how well he would play or how mobile he would be. But after a slow start in the first series, he really got it going. He had a nice pass to Corey Smith. It was about 31 yards down to the 3. They score right after the punt, muff punt, and it was kind of on from there. I think he hit about 8 passes in a row complete and a couple 50-50 balls. Jason Simmons, the Ben Davis coach, after the game said he was talking in his headset like we couldn't cover that any better. There's nothing we could do. So credit to Whitaker, credit to Corey Smith. He made and Freddie Hawthorne had a nice catch, and then really the Brownsburg defense I thought really came to play. They handled everything Ben Davis threw at him in the first half, and like I said, got out that 24-0 lead. Then in the third quarter, had 2 interception returns for touchdowns, and that was pretty much did as Ben Davis was trying to come back. To have that happen just kind of turned any chance of a comeback around. So, just a great performance overall from Brownsburg. I thought Ben Davis, once you get behind the sticks, they turn over 4 times, and you get behind on the scoreboard anyway. It's just hard to beat a team like that. And the only chance they had really in the second half was kind of to see if Brownsburg would sort of get too conservative and maybe allow them to get back in. If they didn't, and Brownsburg moves on, a good win. They had never beat Ben Davis in a tournament postseason game. So first time that's happened, they got over that hump now, and they'll play Avon, who they handled earlier this year by a significant amount. Avon's got they're 2-8. So you would expect Brownsburg to move on potentially and play Cathedral or LC in the next round.
Brownsburg continues to find ways to win big games, and Akeem, I'll bring you on in this too. What is it about this team that's different that you've seen this season from past years that's allowed them? They've beaten Westfield, now they've beaten Ben Davis. They just keep beating a lot of good teams throughout this season. HSE, they had that game as well. But I guess what are you guys seeing from them that's allowed them to get over the hump?
I mean, I don't know if it's different than any other years, but I mean, Brownsburg, their offense doesn't revolve just around Whitaker. I mean, they have a stable of backs with Marcus and Sherrill but they've always had great backs at Brownsburg, and they have a really talented offensive line. So I guess maybe Corey Smith is he kind of the difference? I mean, he's a really great jump ball receiver. He's a really talented kid. Maybe he's the X factor because if his mobility is compromised, he'll need to operate from the pocket. So yeah, if you have a receiver like Corey Smith, he doesn't even need to be open to catch the ball. So maybe he's kind of the X factor there. But they've always had a talented running game, and they have 2 talented backs, like I said. So if they don't have Whitaker's feet, then they have two backs to kind of rely on. So I think the offense can continue to operate smoothly, but I wonder if he faced a really talented pass rush, will he be compromised in that moment? Like maybe that's when the ankle injury will show up a little more, but it seems like they weren't able to get heat on him, and he kind of could do what he wanted. So, no, I feel like Brownsburg's just a well-oiled machine.
They're defensively, too. Years past, it's kind of been like, all right, they can put up points like the Hunter Johnson teams that they had. They could score. They couldn't stop people. Like Ben Davis was too fast for them, and now their defense, I think, is just more from secondary to the line, just more well balanced. They have playmakers at every spot, as they showed with those 2 interceptions for touchdowns, and so I think that's maybe, if you're looking in years past, maybe that's a difference. And also, like I agree with Corey Smith is definitely a kind of guy that they haven't had a lot in the past years. So to have that playmaker receiver, I think, kind of sets them apart a little bit as far as previous years, in my opinion. But yeah, I think they're legit. I mean, all year long they were ranked, or not all year, but towards the end of the year they were ranked number 1. And if not for that injury to Whitaker, they probably still would be. But credit HSE for winning that game. But yeah, I think they're as well. I wrote that Monday. I think they're as maybe well equipped as anybody to win a state championship.
We've been neglecting to mention at the top of the show, among all the hoopla, that we were at Brebeuf Jesuit High School. The Brebeuf moved on in the playoffs with a win over Mooresville on Friday. That was the game that I covered. And then the next day, their soccer team went out and won a thrilling overtime game against Mishawaka Marion to win their 2nd consecutive state title in soccer, which again just completes a remarkable turnaround. We can talk about them a little bit later. I'll just talk quickly about the Mooresville-Brebeuf game. The big takeaway was Brebeuf's defense. Just an incredible job bottling up Nick Patterson. The offense wasn't able to pull quite away, to put that game away early, but I think that's more of a testament to just Mooresville's defense doing a good job than anything else in the first half and just sort of keeping them in that game for long stretches when, honestly, they probably didn't have any business being in that game. Just with how Brebeuf looked on both sides of the ball there for stretches, but credit to Mooresville, they held in there strong. Their defense gave them a chance. The offense just wasn't quite able to break through. Brebeuf moves on now to face Roncalli, a team that they hung with during the regular season. And Kyle, we talked about it on your Spaces show, which folks can listen to on Twitter after every Friday night. But the final score wasn't indicative of the final result, and that was the big talking point from Brebeuf's head coach after the game was we were in that game. We were playing them close, and that gives them a lot of confidence, a lot of reason for optimism going into the rematch on Friday night. With that said, Akeem, which game did you have, and what were your takeaways?
Yeah, I had New Pal versus Greenfield Central. New Pal won 33-9, and New Pal, they won pretty handily, but kind of the main takeaway is they lost Grayson Thomas on his second carry of the game. His first carry goes for an 11-yard touchdown. His second carry, he's grabbing his knee and he's down, and he did not return to the game. But Kyler Kropp, the slot receiver, he plays running back as well, but he stepped in, obviously to replace Thomas and did really well. He had over 100 yards in the first half, and he just kind of, his first drive was he was kind of feeling his way, but then as the game progressed, he just continued to rip off 9, 10, 12-yard runs every time he touched the ball. And then the defense was great as well. Michael Thacker on the defensive line had a couple sacks and pressures. Isaiah Thacker and Daniel Thacker both had interceptions. And then Isaiah Thacker also caught a touchdown pass. So it was a Thacker family reunion at New Pal, like I said, on Kyle Space's show. And no, I just think New Pal just continues to be a dominant force, and you'd hate to see a kid like Thomas go down. I believe he had 1,500 yards. He has 1,500 yards this season. So, but they don't really need to rely on one player. With Kropp, he looked really good, and obviously Tippett's a really talented quarterback as well who can run a little bit and throw. So I'll be interested to see if Thomas can come back and when he comes back and how he looks when he comes back. But I expect New Pal to continue rolling.
Akeem, I like your shirt, the Reggie Miller choke symbol game, and I think that's a perfect segue to the pick segment because
yes.
Kyle did not choke away the lead. In fact, he built upon the lead. It's a tough weekend for you. I'm interested to see how you bounce back. But Kyle, just thoughts on your performance?
It was great. I thought I actually beat him by more than one, but
wow.
I'll take the one, go up by 2 now and protect my lead. Just go into
defend lead mode.
Go into the turtle mode.
So to prevent Kyle from doing that, we've introduced a new game. We're going to add a wild card game wherein we let the boys pick out a game at random to finish. Will this work as we get into later rounds and there are fewer games? No, but that's okay. This was done because Akeem pointed out a game that Kyle missed. So instead of adding it and making the game list longer, we're going to let the boys pick out a game that they feel comfortable picking. We'll see how it goes. It's just a fun twist on an otherwise wonderful product, which is really sort of exciting.
Brian just throwing stuff at us here mid-show.
Yeah, that's how they found out.
As Clark shakes his head.
Clark might actually kill me. So we're going to jump right into the first game of the week, and that's going to be Lutheran, 11-0, taking on Covenant Christian, 8-3. And Kyle, that game is going to be played right here.
It is
at Brebeuf Jesuit.
It is. Covenant played, so they don't have a home field necessarily. They play at Zionsville West Middle School a lot. Last week they played at Danville because Danville was on the road. So this week they're coming here to play, and should be a really fun game. This might be Lutheran's toughest test before, if they can win this, they would probably have a good chance to go back to the state finals. But it's a matchup of the last two 1A state champions. Lutheran, of course, last year, Covenant the year before, in the pandemic year, won their first sectional and first state championship. So this is it's a good matchup. Lutheran barely beat them last year. It was probably their toughest game before the state finals. And Lutheran really at 11-0. Neither of these teams has given up a point yet in their two sectional games. So they've both been really dominant. Micah Mackey has over 1,100 yards receiving for this Lutheran team. So,
wow.
Covenant Christian has good athletes, good players. Tony Flatt's been a quarterback. He was on that team 2 years ago, played defense, and was their best player on that side of the ball. But I just think anybody picking against Lutheran at this point, and we'll see if Akeem does, but I don't think that's probably a smart move. So I'll take the Saints.
Kyle or Akeem?
Yeah, no, like Kyle was saying, I mean, Lutheran is just, again, another juggernaut on offense, averaging 50 points per game. Jackson Willis, 38 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions. And like Kyle was saying, McKay and Brian Shelby, 13 and 12 receiving touchdowns, respectively, between the two of them. And they have a 1,000-yard rusher in Joe Davis as well. So I can't pick against Lutheran in that offense that they have. They're just playing too well right now.
There you go. If that doesn't have you prepared for the first game of the week, I don't know what will. Let's move on to Noblesville, 4-6. Let's pause real quick and talk about the Millers. How about that? A win over Zionsville. I know both of you guys picked it, trying to outsmart the other one, but legitimately, and in all seriousness, that was a really impressive win by Noblesville.
It was, and to your point too. How about the weekend Noblesville had? I know Brian, you were there to see the. I covered the boys and you covered the girls, but and in cross country.
Yeah.
So they had 3 state champions. They had not only one Friday, they had 3 state championships on Saturday.
And the boys cross country team finished top 5. I think I saw on Twitter. Just a remarkable weekend.
Yeah, I think it's the first time that's ever been done, and I was looking at that, and hopefully we'll have a little bit of something more on that, but just amazing you could have that type of a day. But yeah, football wise, I mean, what a big win. And I hear from a lot of people like, will this T formation, the full formation they run, can it actually work in 6A? And I talk to people who kind of are like, yeah, they need to get rid of this offense. They need to run the spread or whatever. But I will say, if you believe in a system and you get your offensive line to where they can block this system, I mean, nothing else has worked at Noblesville, let's be honest, for a long time. So credit what Dave Sharp has done there, and they obviously ran the ball really well. Last time against Westfield, they lost 34-33. They ran for 346 yards in that game. So that's a really good Westfield team. And all that said, I mean, Westfield, they beat Carmel last week. Dylan Thieneman's back playing both sides of the ball. And Kendall Garrett had 143 rushing yards in that game. So really, it's going to be a tall task for Noblesville, but just to get into this game, I think shows the progress they're making. I'll take Westfield, but credit Noblesville for what they're doing.
Westfield beat Carmel handily, correct?
28-9. Yep.
Akeem?
Yeah, no, Kyle pretty much said it all there with Kendall Garrett. It's kind of coming on with the at running back. Cole Ballard is, again, kind of finding himself as well. So I'm going to pick Westfield as well.
All right, both boys are in on Westfield. Another quick note on the Noblesville thing before we move on to the next game. Meredith Tipner and Merritt McLaughlin are the first athletes to win 2 state championships. They won for both soccer and girls basketball earlier this year. So that's a fun fact. First ones to do it in Noblesville since Courtney Cox-Cole and Megan Potey. So those are the only multi-state champions in school history. So that's pretty neat. Fun fact to know and tell. Let's talk about Decatur Central 4-6 at Plainfield 5-5. Akeem, is this Decatur Central? Is this the Decatur Central that we're expecting to see all year?
I guess so. I mean, I know they came in with a lot of expectations, and I was actually at their first game of the season where they didn't look great. I know they had a freshman quarterback in Bo Polston, and they seemed like they needed to kind of get their offense straightened out, and that seems to be coming to fruition now with the kind of the numbers they're putting up. But Plainfield's defense actually played really well in their sectional game. They forced 4 turnovers in that win. Plainfield won the first meeting between these two teams, but I'm going to go Decatur Central. I just think, again, the offense is kind of maturing, and they have playmakers as well. That kind of stood out to me when I saw them for the first meeting, that they were just getting really close on connecting on some deep balls, and once that chemistry kind of develops, they could be able to put up some points. I'm going Decatur Central.
Kyle?
Yeah, I agree with Akeem. I think probably the overall talent level is on Decatur Central's side slightly once they're all healthy. And Asen Stevens playing again. He had been out for a little while, so they're geared up, I think. And Plainfield, this is their first their chance to win their first sectional title in 22 years. And Brian Woodard, this is their next loss will be his last game as coach. He's stepping aside and going to do other things, and after 17 years at Plainfield, so that's sort of an emotional thing that the Quakers can do is try to win one for him. He's never won a sectional before, so and they already have their head coach in place on staff. So, but yeah, from the talent stand, even though Plainfield beat them earlier this year, I think probably Decatur Central is maybe the better pick. But I'll kind of pick a slight upset, I think, and take Plainfield here. What could be a very interesting game. Teams that know each other really well, and Decatur Central has really owned this series for a long time, even though Plainfield won earlier this year. So. I'll take the slight upset and go with the Quakers.
First game of the week that the two differed on was Decatur Central and Plainfield. Kyle taking Plainfield, Akeem taking Decatur Central. Kyle, we'll stay with you. Martinsville 8-3, traveling to East Central 9-2.
Yeah, so this is a tall task. East Central, Cole Burton at quarterback, Josh Ringer at running back, and that's quite a and Ryan Brotherton at receiver. I saw these guys play last year. It's kind of the three, the trio of doom or whatever. They're all really good players, and this is a program that's always very tough. So Martinsville, unfortunately, you kind of would hope they'd get a play at home. They got to go again down to East Central, pretty far trip. Down by Cincinnati, but I think Martinsville's going to be. They kind of have their own trio with Adkins, Shrake, and Skaggs. And Skaggs is, I think, over 1,000 yards receiving now. So I think they're better equipped than they were last year. Last year they lost 37-7 in this game. I think they'll be able to put up more points on East Central. But East Central, again, just very athletic on defense as well, and they play a good schedule. They almost beat Roncalli, so that kind of shows you what they're made of. So I'm going to take East Central. But again, Martinsville turning the corner under Brian Duggar. They've had a really good year, and it's too bad they have to run into these guys right now.
Akeem?
Yeah, like Kyle said, Atkins, 700 yards and 10 touchdowns over his last 3 games. He was over 300 yards last week. But, again, I'm going East Central as well. Josh Ringer is just kind of an impressive running back. He's kind of built like a tight end almost with the way he runs, but he has speed to pull away, and it seems like the first tackler never takes him down. So with Ringer kind of toting the ball, I think East Central has a good chance to win the game, and I'm picking them to win the game.
I think he'll be a D1 running back, by the way. I think he's really good, really fast for his size, too.
Yeah.
Whiteland 9-1 at Franklin 8-2. Akeem?
Yeah, so Franklin, obviously they were able to advance. The quarterback, Clay Pinnock, got injured in the first half. Backup Grayson Betts came in, and he seemed to give them a spark, in the middle portion of the season. So they don't seem to lose anything when he comes into the game, but I'm not sure who is going to end up playing, so that could factor in depending on who is playing at quarterback. Franklin, actually, they needed to come back in the second half. They outscored Terre Haute South 14-0 in the second half, so they didn't start great, but obviously they finished well. I say all that to say I'm picking Whiteland. I just think Whiteland has a good quarterback, and Kevin Denham, he's kind of a steady presence there. They have John Crowley, who's kind of the big play guy, and then Peyton Emberton is kind of the steady workhorse back, and they have Nyrus Moore-Smith as well at playmaker. So I just think Whiteland has kind of the weapons to get it done. And obviously, I guess Franklin has the ultimate playmaker in Max Clark, but depending on the quarterback situation and what they can do, and just the defense needs to step up as well. It's just kind of a tall task for Franklin. So I'm going Whiteland.
Kyle?
Yeah, it was 21-0 last time, but like Akeem meant, Max Clark didn't play that. He was at the USA Baseball thing, and he missed a few weeks, and that was one of the games. So different offense. Franklin actually had to block a field goal against Terre Haute South. I think there was 9 seconds left. It was a pretty short field goal. So they're barely, they're probably feeling like, all right, we survived. Now we get this matchup with our rival. And, again, a series kind of like Decatur-Plainfield where Whiteland has dominated this series for a long time. And so that's kind of another thing kind of hanging over Franklin's heads a little bit. But, I really like Whiteland. When you can run the ball like they can, I always prefer a team that can do that. And I'm going to take them to win. Although last time they played, they had 264 rushing yards or 288 rushing yards, but one of those was on a really long run. So they did a decent job against the run. They'll have to do that again to have any chance. I think if Franklin can kind of keep it 20 in the low 20s, maybe they would have a chance. But I'm going to take Whiteland.
Bishop Guichard 7-4 at Guerin Catholic 7-4. Battle of the 7-4 teams, Kyle.
Yeah, and this game went down to the wire a few weeks ago. Guerin had a 2-point conversion inside a minute left. It was 31-30. Decided to go for 2 after they scored, didn't get it. So they were that close to beating Guichard. So people may forget that or maybe not know that. But that's how close it was last time. Guichard moving back down from 4A last year. They're back in 3A now, where they've really been dominant for a long time. And people haven't seen Guichard lately. They're a passing team. You look at their history, and they're always like, run the ball. They're kind of like Roncalli is now. But with Drew Van Vliet, Noah Dudick, and Aiden Duncan at receiver, those guys, really good yard. I think Dudick's got almost 700 yards, Duncan about 600. So that's really good numbers, and that's how they generate their offense. Kind of similar for Guerin. They'll want to throw the ball too, and Max Fremion's got 1,000 yards receiving. So I would expect probably another high-scoring type of game, and I think Guichard will pull it out again.
Akeem?
Yeah, like Kyle was saying, Drew Van Fleet, he's like a 6'5", big pocket passer. Again, Chatard really spreads you out, and Van Fleet really just stands in the pocket and really connects with his receivers. They love to throw the deep ball, so he's really impressive just watching him play. So I'm going Chatard.
Only one game so far that the boys are different on as we reach the midway point. We'll have at least two with this in the wild card game, I think. Brebeuf Jesuits 7-3. They're going to travel to Roncalli 10-1, the game that we just talked about. Akeem, are we going to see an upset here?
No, I'm not picking an upset. Normally we love to pick the home team, show the home team some love, but I just think Roncalli is kind of just too much to ask with obviously the offensive line and the running game, and the defense is playing good as well. So I'm going Roncalli.
Kyle?
Yeah, I agree. Although you had a chance, Brian, to see Brebeuf last week. They've forced 29 turnovers this season on defense. They're going to make things tough for Roncalli. I think they're going to have a good game plan ready for them. They led last game, even though it was 31-14. It was 14-10 Brebeuf at halftime. So they know they can, that shows they can play and potentially beat Roncalli. But again, Luke Haenchen, they really leaned on him in the second half. He had 240-something yards rushing in that game, and they kind of methodically pulled away like they do. And now you have that new pal lurking out there as your next game. So Roncalli has to focus on this one before that one would even happen. So it's a tough game. I mean, I think it's like one of those, you might look back and say it's kind of maybe a trap game if Brebeuf wins it, but they know Brebeuf. They know how tough this team is. So I think that possibly works to Roncalli's advantage, having seen him before. And I was over there yesterday for another story, and I can tell you they're very locked in on, they're not looking ahead at all. So I'm going to take Roncalli, but I think this will be, the final score I think will be closer than last game, and I think it's a four-quarter. I wouldn't be surprised if Brebeuf had a lead in the late in this game, but I just feel like Roncalli, with what they've done all year, is probably the pick.
Cathedral 8-1, traveling to Lawrence Central at 5-5. Kyle.
I'm sorry, Brian. What'd you say?
Oh no, you're okay. Cathedral 8-1. They're traveling to Lawrence Central 5-5.
Okay. Yeah. So this again, rivalry game. These schools don't play each other a lot, but they're right next door to each other pretty much. Their players know each other. I covered a lot of these basketball games through the years, and it's always very heated, I would say, when these schools play each other. And also, Bill Peoples was the LC coach for a couple of years, left to go to Cathedral. He's probably, 4 or 5 years ago. His alma mater, Cathedral. So, there's also that element to it, and I would want to see this game in person too. I was kind of going between this one and the one I will be covering, but I feel like this is, again, when you look at Cathedral all year long, and they ran the ball really well last game for probably one of the only times this year. I think Carson Johnson had over 200 yards against LN. They had to really fight to win that game. Another Lawrence team that wanted to beat them really bad, 44-35, but so I feel like if they get that element going to go with the pass, I mean, they're virtually unstoppable on offense. Now, you've got a Lawrence Central defense that's got all kinds of talent too, and they'll be able to throw a lot of guys on those big receivers, including Trent Booker Baker, who's going to Virginia. So you got guys on that Lawrence Central team that can really play. And to me, the key of the whole thing, though, is can Elijah Jackson and LC run the ball, keep the ball away from Cathedral to a certain extent, and grind things out. And I think they can. I really do. I think it's going to be, again, I think it's going to be a really good game, a lot of emotion. My head, though, says Cathedral, I think, is going to be the team that comes out of here with the win. And but again, I always couch this, but it seems like, but I really feel like this is going to be a game that could go either way.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's going to be an interesting matchup kind of with a spread offense at Cathedral, and then do you really want to spread out and put your quarterback in shotgun when you have Josh Mickens coming off the edge? And how many times do you want to do that? How do you want to block that? Do you want to use Booten as an extra blocker when he's such a great receiver? Because you're going to have to pay a lot of attention to Mickens. So that's going to be an intriguing matchup that could honestly kind of swing the game. And again, like Kyle said, they got the safety Booker Baker back there controlling the secondary, and that's another kind of advantage if you have someone over the top of Jerron Tibbs. So on paper, it definitely seems like it's going to be pretty close, but I think Cathedral just kind of a lot of this is going to fall on Danny O'Neill. He can't make mistakes. I would imagine with the pressure and the secondary that LC has, they're going to put him in position to make some mistakes, and if they can capitalize on that, maybe LC can pull it out, but my heart is just telling me Cathedral, that they pull out a close game.
Going to pause real quickly. Clark, we need to get one of those for next time we go golfing. One of those massive air blowers, please, and thank you. Next game up, SCECINA 10-1 is traveling to Triton Central 9-2. Akeem.
Yeah, SCECINA's D-line was kind of the story of this the first meeting between these two games, coming up with a goal line stand to win the game. I've had a chance to cover SCECINA multiple times. Adam Young and Tamir Woods are the real deal, kind of at defensive tackle and defensive end respectively. Just they're really good penetrators, and they do a really good job of kind of mucking things up and making things difficult. And DJ Mendez, a quarterback, and is a dual threat guy that can get it done with his arm and legs. So I'm going SCECINA.
Kyle?
Yeah, again, this is, I think, probably one of the best games. If you had to pick one, there's probably three that are all could be number one. This might be the best. You know, this came down to a 2-point conversion, kind of like the Chittard-Guerin game did. Triton had a chance. They got a penalty on the 2-pointer, so they ended up moved it up to, the 1.5-yard line. They go for it. They don't quite run it in. Akeem mentioned that SCECINA defense was able to stack up and hold them out. So, you know, again, that could have gone either way. I think, you know, being at home, Triton Central may help. SCECINA's mostly dominated this series but there've been a lot of close games. Seems like almost every year SCECINA beats them in a really tight game. But I'm going to go again with a slight upset here and take Triton Central. I may not be the smart pick, I think, but if it comes down to a 2-point conversion last time, maybe they get it this time and win on that play. Who knows?
The game is officially a position to potentially tie this thing up.
Or I could go up by 4. You're looking at it from the glass half empty for me.
Listen, I'm just trying to support my guy here. Lastly, before we get to the new wild card round, which will have fireworks and
I'm still confused by that wild card.
Yeah, I am too. That's okay. It was Clark's idea. Hamilton Southeastern 10-0. I might not live through this show, folks. Hamilton Southeastern 10-0. A Med-Soc rivalry rematch with Fishers at 7-3. Akeem, I think we finished with you last time. What do you make of the Mud-Sock rematch?
Yeah, I've yet to had a chance to experience this live, but I mean, just from being at HSC and seeing kind of the atmosphere against Brownsburg, I can only imagine what it's like when Fishers comes and when they're facing off Fishers. I know this game will be at Fishers, but just the intensity that these two teams have and the passion and the pageantry and all that stuff. But I think HSC might have the best playmaker in Donovan Hamilton. Just seeing him in person for the first time, I'm definitely a believer. Just he can, if the ball's in the air, he's going to come down and get it. He's a great contested catch receiver. Brattle, they seem to have a great chemistry between them. Fisher's obviously a contrast with the running game, the two-headed kind of attack that they have, kind of trying to get it done through the ground. So that'll be interesting to see, kind of, again, the contrasting style. One can get it done through the air. The other one likes to get it done on the ground. Defense will obviously be key, but HSC, they looked really good against a Brownsburg team, again, in the game that I saw. So if you can contain Brownsburg's rushing attack, then they might have a good chance of stopping Fishers as well. So I'm going HSC.
Kyle?
Yeah, that's a good point, Akeem. But last time they didn't stop. Kobe Martin ran really well against them. So, you know, I don't know how, you know, what changes from that game. Obviously, it's a new game, a new game plan, a new everything. You start 0-0 again. But I really think Fisher's is going to be able to lean on Martin and Dunn and really try to keep the ball away from HSC. That game felt like Fisher's was about to win it in the fourth quarter. And then HSC had a long drive. Brantman kind of ran wild on them there in the fourth quarter. They found something with him and took advantage of it. Then in overtime, you know, Fisher's just, I don't know if it was a bad snap or what it doesn't matter now, but the extra point, they didn't even get it off, and ended up HSC scores, makes their extra point, and ends up winning the game. Felt like a kind of a crushing emotional loss for Fishers because, man, you had your rival on the ropes, and it would have been a huge win for them. It ended up being a great game and an awesome atmosphere, and I expect similar. I'll be at the different place at Fishers than it was in the first game. It doesn't matter; those schools are so close to each other. It feels like the same place. There's really no home field advantage necessarily, but Akeem brought up a good point on Donovan Hamilton. I think he's an X factor, and really, I don't know how you can pick against HSC, partly because they just find ways to win. They don't.
You faked me out, Kyle.
Yeah, I know. I was going to pick Fishers, honestly, but I think HSC is the not today, but in my picks online. But I'm going back and forth. I just feel like HSC, with what they've done all year, I feel like their passing game's a little bit better than Fishers, and I think that may be a factor as well. They're not a team that's going to blow you out, so I expect this will be a really good game, close game. But I'm going to take the Royals, and it's kind of you got to tip your hat to what they've done all season, and credit Michael Kelly, their coach there, who's really, you know, they've kind of come up from pretty, not way far down. They have a lot of talent, but really got this program going in the right direction.
All All right, wild card time. Akeem, there was a game that was neglected and left off the list that you really wanted to pick. So what game was that, and who are you picking?
Yeah, that was Danville versus Monrovia, and
Danville hates Danville apparently.
Yeah, Danville's just been kind of these scrappy underdogs, or I mean, at least to us. You know, they probably don't appreciate that at all. But I understand they had a change of quarterback mid-season that's kind of propelled them and kind of obviously allowed them to go on this run. I just wanted to shout out Danville, and
Who are you picking?
If I had to pick, I'm picking Danville. I don't know if this is an official pick,
it's
but
an official pick.
If Danville wins, and it definitely is, and if depending on Kyle's pick, we'll see.
I was waiting for him to go the other way and be like, I'm actually picking Monrovia. Having said all that, go Monrovia.
That's what I expected to happen because I'm picking. I already picked Danville in my pick,
okay,
so you can throw that out the window.
No drama, guys. Sorry.
All right, well, I guess we'll just scrap that idea. Thanks, guys, for letting that fall down the toilet. I thought it was a good idea.
He should have to pick Monrovia because he
He
asked.
He should. He really should. Kyle, what do you have coming up this week?
So I've got actually had a story came out today, kind of a fun one on Indian Creek's coach Casey Gillen. Had to miss Friday's game. Unfortunately, they lost by 1 point. His wife, her water broke Friday morning. And so he had all his stuff with him, was ready to hopefully have the baby, then go to the game. But the baby was not quite ready to be born yet. So he was in the hospital. She was born, I think, 2:50 a.m. Saturday. So he listened to the radio, pulled up the app on his phone, listened on the radio on his headphones. He had his play sheet in front of him. He wasn't calling any plays, but living and dying with every call. And unfortunately, like I said, they lost to Batesville by 1 point. But pretty funny because Casey is the son of Mike Gillen, the Mooresville coach. So I called Mike yesterday, and he's like, I would have picked going to the game. He's very honest grandpa. Now, he was with Casey Saturday morning, but and he kind of a full circle, and people can read the story online. But Mike actually missed when Casey was born in 1984. He was coaching at Tri-West. He missed the day before the game. Casey was born on, I think, a Thursday, and then he coached the game on Friday against Sheridan. They lost 6-0. But Casey's never lived it down that he cost him the preparation to lose the semi-state game against Sheridan. So it all comes full circle. Casey made the right decision, obviously, to be with his wife, I talked to her too, and she was very understanding of his emotions. But kind of a fun story about high school football. But I got that. We got predictions and
Roncalli?
I got a Roncalli story coming up on Luke Schwartz. I talked to him yesterday. Very inspiring young person. He's got a great story to tell. And I know, Brian, you're rolling out the basketball stuff. So
we'll get to that in a second. Akeem, we're gonna let you have the floor. What do you got?
I think I got Butler tonight, and then I'll have some more Butler in the future, and then some wrestling stuff and some college basketball stuff. So a little bit of everything.
He's a man of many hats, and he's second in the picks competition. It's impressive what Akeem has done this season. I'm so proud of you.
Thanks, Brian.
Again, before Clark kills all of us.
Just you.
Brandishing the knife at all three of us to get this over with. Lots of basketball coverage. First, check out all the soccer coverage. We have coverage from all 6 games. Kyle and I and Lewis Bagley and Grace and Doug McSchooler. We have coverage from all 6 games. And Kyle Skokeland from Evansville. We have coverage from all 6 games. So check that out online if you like soccer. Basketball, we have yesterday was the Super Team. Today was the Fab 15, a viewer's guide. And in case you missed it, because a lot of stuff happened during the offseason, believe it or not, between the best player in the state transferring and coaching changes and recruiting and all that stuff. So we have a guide to get you caught up from there. It was honestly a helpful refresher for me, even as I go into this thing. Tomorrow, or today probably as you're watching this show, you can find a story that we did with the Super Team where we asked them their favorite and least favorite gyms to play in. A lot of love for Brownsburg, a lot of less love for Fishers. And then the toughest player they had to guard, which netted some cool responses, especially hearing from kids who played Sidney Parrish, a full-grown senior as freshman, and just sort of being terrified of that whole experience going in. Made for some really fun stories. And also state volleyball is this weekend. There was a nightmarish scenario, which would have been awesome, don't get me wrong, but from, my sanity standpoint, it would have been scary. We almost had 4 teams get through to the state championship, which just speaks to the level of volleyball that's being played here in Central Indiana, Akeem. It's amazing. One team got through, that was Hamilton Southeastern. I think everybody else darn near went 5 sets, I want to say. Two of the 3 others went 5 sets, which is, again, just a testament to the depth of talent. But we'll have a story on Sophie Ledbetter, Hamilton Southeastern's libero, who moved there from attacker, so she's sort of flipping to the other side of the game. That'll be cool, and then a preview thing. And coverage Saturday, I'm covering North Central. Westfield, you'll have some coverage of that tonight by the time you watch this. And then this weekend, we're covering 4 things: 3 basketball games, Ben Davis Classic. Zionsville Lawrence Central is going to be wild with the Lampley girls going up against Layla Hall from Zionsville, and then obviously volleyball at night. That's all I got. I apologize for filibustering. Clark, I'm so sorry. We thank you all so much for watching. We'll be back with you all next week right here.